having the camera on the road in front of me, you guys can look at me with my cool tactical sunglasses with the ballistic lenses. Hoorah! Hey guys, so I am attorney Michael Ehline. I am an attorney licensed in California. Me with my cool tactical sunglasses with the ballistic lenses. Hoorah! Hey guys, so I am attorney Michael Ehline. I am an attorney licensed in California. Me with my cool tactical sunglasses with the ballistic lenses. Attorney Michael Ehline, California. Me with my cool tactical sunglasses with the ballistic lenses. Sounds like tactical sunglasses. We're simulcasting on YouTube as well as over here. Tactical sunglasses. Hey Jody, how's it going? Simulcasting on YouTube as well as over here. Tactical sunglasses. Hey Jody, how's it going? You hear me talking on a YouTube video as well as over here? That sounds terrible. Typical, right? What a freaking nightmare. What a freaking nightmare. What a freaking nightmare. What a freaking nightmare. So Jody, do you hear the other video talking at the same time as me talking? Like, do you hear background? So Jody, freaking nightmare. Do you hear the other video talking at the same time as me talking? Like, do you hear background? So Jody, freaking nightmare. Do you hear the other video talking at the same time as me talking? Like, do you hear background? So Jody, freaking nightmare. Is me talking? Like, do you hear background? So Jody, freaking nightmare. Let me know. Me talking like you hear that. So I don't want to waste a bunch of time trying to do a video where you can hear me talking in the background. I don't want to waste a bunch of time trying to do a video where you can hear me talking in the background. I'm trying to figure it out, Jody. It out, Jody. How's that? No, I still hear, so I can hear background noise. Before I totally give up, give me 1 second, all right? All right, what do you think? Can you hear me now? Do I have comms or what's going on? I just need to know if I've got comms, Jody. It looks like I'm live. Okay, cool. Do you guys hear any background noise? I just want to make sure. Because I was hearing all this background babble when I first started. Like, it sounded like an echo chamber, so just wanted to make sure. Okay, cool. All right, so the other day I was doing the Lane Myers video and just thinking about how it almost looks like lawfare is being used against him because he's effective. And I thought about the Trump case and how the Democrat Party, along with the Biden auto pen White House, were coordinating criminal and civil prosecutions with Soros prosecutors, Democrats, against President Trump. And I thought about how Lane Myers went to the city council meeting wearing a MAGA hat where they were applauding and praising people who were in the right of self-defense. And when Lane stood up and booed, what happened to him? He gets criminally prosecuted for booing at a city council meeting, going against the leftist narrative. And I was like, wow, there's a lot of parallels between this and the Trump criminal felony hush money case. And so I thought, I'm going to see what's going on. What's the status of that case? So I did a little bit of research. And so that case is pending before the New York would be appeals. So in New York, it's a little bit different. So their superior courts are called Supreme Court. Whereas most state courts, we have Superior Court, then we have an appellate court, and then we have the state Supreme Court. But in New York, they call their lower court the Supreme Court, which is really interesting. So a lot of people get confused who aren't really knowledgeable in the way the legal system works in America. because each state is sovereign in its own independent country. At least that's how it's supposed to be, much to the chagrin of the leftists and the people who support a centrist, centralized control over every aspect of our lives. And so that's a big difference about New York. And so just so you understand that. So I went ahead and I took a look at the progress of the criminal case. And so there were a bunch of different cases against Trump, and it looks like they're all falling apart, as we kind of knew they would. They had all these DEI prosecutors, Alvin Bragg and Letitia, and then the other one who was given her boyfriend like $500,000 a year to act as assistant counsel in I think it was the Georgia case, Fannie Willis. So all those cases are falling apart, just totally inept to do whatever the political apparatus tells them to do. And they just went ahead and started going after Trump after he was out of office. And of course, we know now that the primary reason behind that is they wanted to get as many criminal convictions and civil charges that in libel findings against him in far left states like New York and Georgia to prevent him from running for president. And why would they do that? Well, I think we all know why, because I think many people believe that he won the second election and that it was total fraud. I mean, they're pulling out boxes of ballots from underneath tables after they kicked out all the vote counters, and putting cardboard slits over the windows so the poll watchers couldn't watch as they dumped ballots into voting machines, these Dominion voting machines. And now it turns out that all these high level Democrats have monetary interests in Dominion voting machines. It's just crazy. So the goal, obviously, I think to most people who are somewhat intelligent, was to prevent Donald Trump from running or to taint him in such a way as to make him unelectable. But instead they turned him into a martyr. And he won again for the third time, say many. And so, hey, what's going on? What's going on, Dar? What's going on, Jody, Stomper? Good seeing you guys. And I was thinking this is really similar to what they're doing to Lane Myers, right? They're trying to make him look like he's a crazy person and that he's guilty of all these crimes, and therefore the government class like Matt Walker and whatnot in Arizona have clean hands. They did nothing wrong in originally trying to prosecute him for what essentially amounts to him exercising his First Amendment rights in a limited public forum. That was the nexus of the whole case against him. But now in this particular case, and again, I'm on the way to the gym, so I'm going to paraphrase and condense as much as I can. In this particular case, it involves acts of the president, official acts of the president while he was in office. And it had to do with this porn star, Stormy Daniels, and this guy, Michael Cohen, this totally corrupt extortionist attorney who recorded private conversations between him and President Trump and then deleted sections of the recordings, kind of like they did at the Jan 6 committee. Like they only showed video of a few hundred people who were violent, but they didn't show any of the video of thousands of other people who were nonviolent at that protest, to make it look like everybody there was engaged in violence. And now we found out that the audience was filled with FBI informants and Antifa members dressed as Trump supporters. And all this evidence is coming out. And so one of the things they had to do is make sure that Liz Cheney, who was part of this Democrat committee to try and sabotage President Trump from running for election, was pardoned. They auto-pen pardoned Cheney, and of course they destroyed evidence, everything. The Jan 6 committee destroyed everything. So just so you get an idea of how corrupt these people are, right? So she gets pardoned, and who else gets pardoned? Milley, who was working with communist China to undermine the president while he was the sitting president. So just to kind of give you an idea of the corruption, and most of these people were Obama and Bush 2 appointees, right? The CIA, the FBI. Once Biden got into office, they deleted thousands of Twitter and Facebook accounts who said that it was a setup, who said that the Hunter Biden laptop was real with all the child porn, you know what, on it. And of course, all of these Obama and Bush CIA and FBI officials came out and said, "Oh no, it's probably Russian disinformation." We know now that was a lie. We know that based on the Twitter files released by Elon Musk, that the Biden administration was orchestrating all this, making sure that your Twitter account would be banned if you discussed any of this stuff, to create the false appearance of a consensus that all of the things being spread by Communist News, CNN, and MSNBC were true, and that in fact Trump was engaged in all this bad stuff and that he was trying to overthrow the government. But yet they ignored the fact that BLM caused trillions of dollars in property damage, was destroying and burning down cities, and they just said that was mostly peaceful. Well, I think most people now realize that mainstream news is basically a political apparatus of the left. And I just saw the other day that it looks like MSNBC and CNN, hold on, I have to get my weapon ready. There's a person over here that looks like he might be problematic. So, in essence, we call it lawfare, and we saw the same thing happening with Macron over in France, and we just see it happening anywhere. Anyone who goes against George Soros and the globalist agenda, they're immediately prosecuted with something. And it just reminded me a lot of what's going on with Lane Myers. Hey, SNS Contracting, good seeing you. And yeah, and you're right. Putin does know judo, and I wouldn't want to mess with the guy. And I'm a judoka myself. And by the way, I'm doing this show early and going to the gym early today because we're getting Gunner ready for his first judo tournament. So give me a bunch of ones for Gunner, and just earned his green belt recently. He's been studying under Judo Josh, and he's really doing well. And he's learning the code of the samurai and how to be an honorable person in all things that he does in life. So back on this. So what ends up happening is Judge Merchant, who is also a far hardcore leftist progressive judge, for some reason keeps getting assigned all the Trump cases. And remember, that's not how it's supposed to work. When a case gets filed against someone, the cases are supposed to go on a lottery. But we know that New York, Georgia, and most of these states that have, that don't have voter ID, Democrat states, are constantly, for some reason or another, able to get away with this kind of stuff. So anyways, what we saw is a concerted effort to try and prevent Donald Trump from running for election for the third time by trying to poison him and taint his name. And so one of the very first acts of Joe Biden was to reverse Donald Trump's executive order ordering illegal aliens to shelter in place and seek, if they want to come into the United States, seek amnesty or seek legal entry through the port of entry in Mexico or their country, and not just sneak across the border illegally and seek some kind of amnesty that way. And so when I was growing up, I learned very quickly what California had done. California, which is a very conservative state, with the left coast, the blue areas in the left coast, the bankers and the Hollywood producers, the P diddlers, right? The Epstein Islanders on the coastline, they were able to figure out, well, if we can make California a sanctuary state, all of these illegal aliens will come here, and we will always be a single party Democrat state because we can move them into our sanctuary cities like LA. And then what we can do once these people move into the sanctuary cities is, once there is a census, all of these illegal aliens get counted for purposes of what they call redistricting. And so without a single vote cast, the Democrats were able to use illegal aliens to pick up about 5 additional seats in Congress. And that's how the Democrats are able to push the agenda that they have, like tampon machines in the boys' room, men and women's sports, right? Because nobody in their right mind would ever vote for things like this. So what they do is they use illegal aliens to pick up House seats using the U.S. Census. And of course, in California, in addition to that, they register them to vote at the Department of Motor Vehicles. And we now know from testimony before the California State Legislature that, in fact, illegal aliens do vote and have been voting in elections consistently in the state of California. But that was one of the very first acts of Joe Biden. was to make sure that illegal aliens, over 20 million by some estimates, could flood across the country. And they immediately went to where? No, they didn't go to agricultural areas. They were given free cell phones. They were told they would get free hotels. They would get free everything if they went to these sanctuary cities in Democrat states. And that's what happened. And of course, the locals, especially the black community, was like, well, this is ridiculous. We're being replaced by these illegal aliens, and they get more money than we do in welfare benefits and SNAP benefits, hotels, and we think this is unfair. To the point where even Mayor Adams of New York was under pressure to get rid of these illegals. But the long-term play is that if they can flood enough illegals into the country, by the next census count, there will never be a Republican majority anywhere in this country. It will always be like the state of California. That's their goal. That's the long-term play. So what ended up happening here is that the argument is that the Biden administration full well knew that these 20 million illegals that he flooded into the country the census wouldn't go through by the time of the third election attempt of Trump. So they had to come up with other ways to keep him from running or get him thrown in jail. And so that's where the George Soros prosecutors came into play. The same people who let criminals and murderers out on a daily basis based on skin color, for example, or don't even have them on bail, immediately went after Trump. And so one of these cases involved criminal allegations that Trump was involved in a hush money case. And so right along the time that criminal case was being filed against him by Alvin Bragg and Judge Merchan, and by the way, Judge Merchan, again, a hardcore Democrat Party operative, his daughter raises millions of dollars for the Democrat Party, and one of her promises to her audiences at her speeches was that her father was going to basically, under bated breath, make sure that Donald Trump would be criminally convicted, like he was handling the criminal case against Trump, a Democrat operative and donor to the Democrat Party, who by all rights should have recused himself from that case. And so there was another case brought by this other guy. He was through the Belgian, he was part of the international court. Joe Biden recalls him to bring charges against Trump for election interference. And of course, that case got blown out as well. And now that particular so-called special counsel, who was never officially or lawfully appointed as special counsel, may very well end up going to prison himself. And so ultimately, in that particular case, which was ultimately dismissed in Florida by a federal judge, it was determined that a president cannot be held liable for his official acts while he's officially engaged in official acts as president. And so his tweets and things that he put out to the public, those are official acts. But Alvin Bragg ignored all that and moved forward with the criminal case anyways in New York. And that was a hush money case involving Stormy Daniels, where his attorney, Michael Cohen, total scumbag piece of garbage lawyer, who actually recorded confidential calls between him and Trump to try and extort Trump, ultimately was disbarred and thrown in prison. He's their star witness. Him and Stormy Daniels, someone who allegedly admitted to prostitution as a porn star, they were the primary witnesses against Trump. And of course, we know that the Democrats love to bring charges against Republicans in Democrat areas, like Washington, D.C., about 99% Democrat, or New York or Georgia. And so that's what happened here. And as a result, hey, good seeing all you guys. Good seeing all you guys. So, wow, we got a lot of people in here this morning. So, by the way, I'm on my way to the gym, guys, so forgive me. I'm paraphrasing, and I'm trying to break things down in layman's terms. And again, I'm a lawyer. I have over 20 years in practice. I've externed for the California Court of Appeal, and I have a lot of experience doing appellate work, habeas, certiorari, and presently I do workers' compensation cases and personal injury claims. And I don't do as much criminal defense and civil rights cases as I used to, unless it's a police shooting or a tight handcuff case or something like that, because I just don't have the money to fund all these cases and pay a huge staff anymore. It's just too much. I'm kind of burned out, I'll be honest with you. I'd rather just do YouTube and help you guys understand the law. But in the interim, while I build my online presence, this is what I'm doing. So, in any event, what happened was, as we all knew was going to happen, we have a Democrat jury in hardcore left-wing Democrat New York. The court, along with Alvin Bragg, are able to get 34 felony convictions against Trump based upon tainted testimony of a scumbag turncoat attorney who represented Trump, who recorded conversations against Trump and tried to extort him and blackmail him as their star witness, as well as a porn star. And of course, the jury buys into it. Why? Well, because the judge leads the prosecution in many ways, just by a nod or rolling the eyes or an eyebrow going up. That's enough for the jury to see. And they really take a lot of cues from the judge, and the rulings of the judge. And so the judge basically ignored the fact that the U.S. Supreme Court had already ruled in another case that had been dismissed in Florida, that these things like tweets and phone calls and confidential communications between his attorney were all done as official acts as President of the United States while he was in office. And none of this evidence should have been brought into the case at all. But Bragg basically ignored all this and said, you know what, I don't care what the Supreme Court says. I'm going to move forward with my rendition of these charges. And that's what happened. And they were able to secure these convictions. And now that case is before the New York Court of Appeals, which is their version of the Supreme Court in California, for example. So in California, we have municipal, then we have superior, and then we have the Court of Appeal, not appeals, but appeal, which is, I was at the Court of Appeal. And then we have the California Supreme Court. And that's what happened. So because the census hasn't been done yet, these 20 million illegals won't be able to be used to pick up about another 10 seats for the Democrats. And so in the meantime, Trump is trying to get rid of these illegals that were brought up here for the sole purpose of redistricting and making the whole country blue, because they can't win. Again, Democrats can't win elections based upon things like tampon machines in the boys' room and boys and girls sports. That they know they can't win on that, but it's their globalist buddies that like that stuff. They're the ones who fund their elections, right? So that's why they push these agendas. And they know the only way they'll ever win another election is with more seats. So again, that's why they have sanctuary cities. It's not to help these poor illegals. It's to help Democrats pick up House seats. And that's what they do it for. And they do it with your tax dollars. And I think people are starting to catch on about what's really going on. So what ended up happening is, and I'm looking at some of the comments of you guys, and it looks like you're basically just repeating what you heard on the Communist News Network. So I'm just going to ignore those and get into the facts of this particular case. So in this particular case, Michael Cohen was brought in as their star witness. Now, obviously in California, I would call him as a hostile witness under 776 of the Evidence Code. And more than likely, I would have had him disqualified as a witness. Certainly the jury would have not believed anything he said by the time I was done with him. But New York is a different animal, and you had a hardcore left-wing activist judge leading that case as the judge, as well as a hardcore George Soros, lawfare, DEI prosecutor, Alvin Bragg. And so they were able to secure these convictions against Trump, hoping that would prevent him from running for president, hoping that they would get him thrown in jail. But it had the exact opposite effect. What it really did is it emboldened most Americans who can see through this, and they realize, oh my God, this is ridiculous. They don't want this guy to run for president because they know he's going to win for a third time. And so what ended up happening is Trump wins the election, this time even with all their voting machines and all the voter fraud and using their Acorn-style Act Blue organization to get fraudulent votes. They weren't able to do it. It was too big to rig, basically, this time around, and Trump won. And I think that probably millions of votes were still illegally cast in favor of Camel Toe Harris. That's what I believe. And that may come out now that we have an FBI that's not filled with a bunch of Obama appointees. So I think Trump figured it out. He got rid of all these guys, these Hillary Clinton supporters, and all these people who were basically political tools of the left from the FBI and the CIA. He voided all their security clearances and got them out of there. So they're gone. CNN, PMSNBC, and all these left-wing, basically propaganda arms of the Democrat Party are now basically going bankrupt, as well as ABC. So bring it fast forward. Now that case, the 34 or 35 felony convictions against Trump, is before the New York Court of Appeals. And we already have the U.S. Supreme Court specifically said, look, Sotomayor, by the way, heard Trump's brief saying that we think that this whole case is bullshit and it shouldn't even be going forward. And of course, Sotomayor, a far left Supreme Court justice, said, oh no, it can still go forward because you have a remedy on appeal. So basically, because Trump already knew that the writing was on the wall. He was going to lose that Democrat case no matter what happened. So what ended up happening is the case is now up on appeal, and everything was stayed because Trump was elected president. And so Trump is now in office, and there is a pending appeal before the New York Court of Appeals. I think most people realize that far left activist judges at the New York Court of Appeals, I think there's a 90% chance that they're going to rule against Trump, and it's going to go before the U.S. Supreme Court. Ultimately, Trump is going to get all those 34 felony convictions dismissed. I told you guys this at the very beginning. And again, I've got a lot of experience having worked at the prosecutor's office as well as at the Court of Appeal. So I think I can, on good authority, I can pretty much guarantee that all those charges are going to be vacated on appeal. And that's why I gave this YouTube video the title that I gave it. So what's going to end up happening, guys, is mark my words, the case that was the tainted case that was brought against Trump for the purpose of preventing Trump from running, or at least to make it look like Trump is a bad person and you shouldn't vote for him, will be vacated on appeal. And this brings me back full circle to Chili DeCastro and Lane Myers. So many people were against Chili DeCastro, even though the charges against him were false and he was jailed illegally and unlawfully. And the same thing I feel has happened with Lane Myers. They were so happy. It was basically like the people that said free Barabbas and crucify Jesus. The same exact mentality. They're so thrilled when the legal system can be used to destroy their political opponents. And it really, really makes me sad that our whole justice system has been so politicized, basically by the left. And I think Republicans are going to start doing what the Democrats have been doing as well, because what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And I've told you guys this in the past, that mark my words, what they're doing against Trump is going to be used against them. What they're doing to Trump will be used against them by Republicans. And now we're basically going to have every new administration is going to bring charges against the last administration in perpetuity. And our court system now has zero trust by the populace. So it's like the Saul Alinsky thing that Obama wanted for this country, where people have no faith in the system and the system will implode upon itself. And that's what Obama wanted. And I believe that that is exactly what's going to happen, because nobody really believes in the justice system anymore. And so that's why I have been telling you guys also for years that we should support and form parallel systems where we try and not deal with the powers that be, and that you patriots run for the school board like the blue-haired rainbow flag mafia has been doing, that you run for sheriff, that you get involved yourselves and get these freaking weirdos out of office who think that boys should be competing in girls' sport. Get rid of them. Get them out of office. Instead of complaining about it, do what all these lefties have been doing and get yourselves involved in the system. Myself, being a libertarian, I don't support either political party, and I think that you should run on a third, fourth, fifth, or sixth party platform, because my position is very simple, that less government means more freedom. And the more we handcuff and chain up the government to prevent them from passing more laws that ultimately result in taking away your freedom, the better. I believe that we should be electing people who want to delete laws, which is the name of Chili de Castro's channel, Delete Laws. I believe that voting for people and trying to put people into positions of power who want to delete laws is the only way we'll be able to save this country. Give me a bunch of ones if you agree. So now let me just take a look here at these comments. Hey, thanks, Linda. I love you too. And Gen X and beyond, well, you're a Gen Xer, so that's why you feel that way. And yeah, well, we didn't try Joe Biden. I mean, basically, with the help of voting machines and the left-wing controlled news media, left-wing controlled CIA and FBI, who shut down anyone's accounts who spoke out about the true story of the Hunter Biden laptop, who spoke out about lawfare, they had their accounts instantly banned. Anyone who talked about the jabs, instantly banned, because the left can't win based upon the truth. They win based upon silencing and censoring people. And when they do that, they try and create the false impression of a majority and a consensus. And that's what they did during the government shutdowns, during this so-called virus that took place. And now we know from the Twitter files that that was all orchestrated by the Biden White House, by President Autopen. And we know now 1,000% that CIA and FBI agents were going back and forth from the White House and from government positions and got cushy jobs working for Facebook, Google, and Twitter. And they worked with their connections at the Biden administration to silence and shut people's internet and social media accounts down if they did not side with the left-wing consensus of Silicon Valley. And so ultimately, we got lucky, and I don't care what you think of Elon Musk. If he had not taken over Twitter, the world would be, there would just be a single statement, a single analysis of and fact pattern of what the truth was. And so by Musk doing that, he took away the ability of the left to have basically 90% control over the news. And now you see that the only news station that has any sympathy from the American people, believe it or not, is Fox News, which kind of blows me away because the same guy who owns Fox News also owns the New York Times. So I don't understand what that's all about. But anyways, I appreciate all you guys joining me. Hey, Tiffany, I appreciate all you guys joining me. And it's funny to see these lefties saying that here's the thing about the left is they'll just say, what you're saying is a lie. You're a liar. You're a racist. You're a bigot and you're a homophobe. But they can never provide any evidence. It's all just conjecture and argumentative statements and ad hominem attacks. So in any event, we now know that yes, the President of the United States, while during his tenure in office, is immune from prosecution for official acts. And President Trump's tweets, President Trump's conversations with his former attorney, Michael Cohen, that Cohen illegally tape recorded in violation of state bar ethics guidelines, were all privileged, and they should have never been introduced as evidence to this jury in the New York criminal case. The New York criminal case is now before the New York Court of Appeals, and if the New York Court of Appeals doesn't abide by the law and vacate the criminal charges, and if the New York State Bar doesn't go against Alvin Bragg, as well as Letitia James, and even Judge Merchan, I believe that the U.S. Supreme Court is going to make sure that something happens here, because as a result of this lawfare and these illegal and unlawful prosecutions and civil cases brought against Donald Trump, it has absolutely tainted the view of the court system in at least 51% of the American population, probably more, because again, illegal aliens voting and voting machines probably created several million illegal Democrat votes. And again, I've never met anyone who supports men playing in women's sports. I've never met anyone who supports tampon machines in the boys' restroom, except for in cities like San Francisco. Other than that, if you go anywhere else in America, you'll never meet anybody like that. So I find it really hard to believe that Sleepy Joe, President Dementia Autopen, got 81 million votes or whatever it was. And I think most of you guys who are sensible people who have a brain recognize that. So let's just see if there's anybody who has any questions. I believe you're probably right, Jim. But Jim, the problem, again, qualified immunity, Jim, has to do with shielding a government employee's official private assets from what they've done in their official capacities. And that's just qualified immunity, which means there's a rebuttable presumption that this cop or this government official is immune. But judges, and in particular the President of the United States, have absolute immunity. So again, a politically charged persecution with a good activist judge like a Merchan can absolutely tear through all of that qualified or whatever immunity and say it doesn't exist here. So, but ultimately, these cases against Donald Trump prove, number one, that most of the cases that are being brought, I would say all of the cases that were brought against Trump are based upon, they're political. Democrat prosecutors, Democrat states, Democrat juries, Democrat judges, all political activists, all far left, all big-time Sleepy Joe supporters. And that's what we ended up with here, hardcore lefties. And so I'm looking at all these comments. So Jet says, I voted for Trump and I already got my vote's worth. Everything else he does is just icing on the cake. Well, Gus, I don't think that Trump is destroying the economy. In fact, up until 1913, the way that America made their money is off tariffs. And it was when our banking system was turned over to like Kuhn Loeb Bank and all of these bankers at Jekyll Island that we had this income tax that was only supposed to be for corporations imposed upon we the people. And now our income, our earnings are looked at as income. And income is supposed to be profits severed from capital, aka corporations. And all the money that we're paying in income taxes, pretty much, most of it, is being used to pay debt service on fiat currency that we borrowed from this banking company, this private corporation called the Federal Reserve Bank. So it's basically money created out of nothing, right? It's not even money. It's fiat currency created out of nothing. And your income taxes go to pay for debt service on that money that they allegedly loaned the United States government. So it's all, in my opinion, basically like Amway or something. You know, it's, what do they call it? What's the name they call that, guys? A Ponzi scheme. So you guys, unfortunately, if you went to public school or you went to a leftist-run communist university, college university system, you actually believe that your income taxes are paying for services, when in fact most of it's being paid for debt service on an imaginary debt that you don't even owe. And in fact, the Federal Reserve Bank, private banking corporation, owns all the gold in Fort Knox. They own it. So even if the gold is there, it doesn't matter. It doesn't belong to the American people anymore. And so going back to a tariff-based system is probably the only way, a gold-based system, getting rid of the privately run corporation, the Federal Reserve Bank. And the way you know it's private, who can't be fired? Who can't be fired, guys? The head of the Federal Reserve Bank. Why do you think that is? Why can't the president, who's supposed to be in charge of the executive branch, why can't the president fire him? Do your research, guys. Stop listening to CNN. And you're right, Rami, that is exactly what's right. And then, so the people who went to the Marxist-run education system say, oh no, we've been educated, we're not indoctrinated. That's funny. So in any event, that's right. So let me see here. Yeah, the Russia thing, that was created by the Hillary for President campaign. And that was because she illegally, in violation of her NDA, and her duties as a government official, illegally had a private server set up in her basement, which President Obama knew about. And she was conducting private business in her official capacity on a private server using a private email, so it could not be subpoenaed through public records requests. And she was using that as a slush fund to make money for herself. And as a result, she had to get some interference run for her, and she used her friends in the liberal news media to say that, oh no, Trump is really a Russian agent, blah, 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 and got her friends and Obama appointees and prior Obama officials who worked for the CIA to say that, oh, it looks like Trump is a Russian agent. And she did that to cover up for the fact that she had used BleachBit and destroyed over 10,000 emails that were official government records that she had hidden on a private server that were released by WikiLeaks, by the way, so we know what they were, to try and sort of distract the American people so she could run for president. And that's what really happened, guys. I mean, imagine if Donald Trump had destroyed over 10,000 top secret and classified emails after they were subpoenaed, and used BleachBit and had friends on his staff destroy them with hammers, cell phones and Blackberries with cell phones. He'd be in prison for life. But Hillary got away with it because, again, she basically runs CNN, PMSNBC, and all these news networks. And so we saw lawfare in full effect. And, of course, the Hunter Biden laptop, all of Biden's friends at the CIA and FBI were saying, oh, no, it's probably Russian disinformation, which is a total lie. His drug addict son just was stupid and left his laptop at a computer repair shop and didn't pick it up because he was probably having, wiped out from cocaine. And that's what ended up happening. And so Del Rounds, I became a lawyer on the law study program. And after I was a practicing attorney, I graduated from the University of West Los Angeles School of Law as a practicing attorney. And UWLA, as I recall, has more judges that graduated from that school on the bench in LA than any other law school. And so I don't give a lot of credence to law school. I learn more from studying under judges and lawyers on the law study program, which is how all of our founding fathers who were lawyers became lawyers on the Inns of Court system. Again, law schools didn't come into existence, I think, until the late 1800s. And prior to that, you became a lawyer by reading for the law under a judge or a lawyer. And so I had the advantage of not going to some leftist-run so-called education system and being brainwashed to hate my country like people like you who ask stupid questions. So, and I agree with you, Thomas Delaney. And so let's see here. 2025. Well, I know that the Project 2025 is part of that the Bush Republican thing, right? So I don't really care about any of that stuff. That's all just red herrings put out there by the leftist-run press. I think that the main reason why the press and the rhinos and the Democrats went after Trump is because he was the one president that they couldn't control. He was the one president who wasn't part of the Skull and Bones Society. He was the one president who wasn't part of the OSS, CIA-created government, Federal Reserve System created presidents. And so they had to do anything they could to try and destroy him, and they used lawfare to try and do that. But somehow or another, he was able to figure out a way to get elected for a third time. And this time he was able to take office. And so that's pretty much what that's all about. And then, of course, we have Tina repeating the typical leftist nonsense that Trump wants all blacks and Asians and anyone who isn't white like this, blah, blah, blah. So anyways, you can tell the people who went to a public university or college, right? They just basically regurgitate all the left-wing garbage. That's really hilarious. It's like, do any of you guys have a mind of your own? So, hey, Rami, good seeing you. I don't know about J.D. Vance or any of that stuff, but what I do know is at least he was a Marine, and so me being a Marine, I'm always gung-ho about jarheads, because we have a different code of honor that we live by. But, could he be corrupted? Of course. And are most people who seek political power corrupt? I think so. So, again, I'm not a big-time Trump supporter, guys. I'm not here to say Trump is innocent or any of that stuff. But what I am here to do is tell you that, hey, it's obvious. It's obvious, I think, to anyone who has a brain, who hasn't been brainwashed by the left-wing Marxist-controlled education system in this country, basically that was funded by the KGB and now by China, the Communist Chinese, through their Confucian societies. I have a different point of view. I'm not so partisan that I can't see what happened in this case. And I will tell you, I would say there's a 99.99% chance that the so-called criminal convictions against Trump in New York, based upon a so-called hush money case, using testimony of two totally biased and uncredible witnesses will be reversed, whether it's done at the New York Court of Appeals or at the U.S. Supreme Court, because it's so obvious that these were political persecutions that there's no way they can stand. And why is that? I think that these political appointees at the Supreme Court, even Sotomayor, realize that if these convictions are allowed to stand, that if the Republicans are able to pick up political power again, and that's highly unlikely with 20 million illegal aliens, because again, sanctuary cities are used for purposes of using illegal aliens to pick up House seats using the U.S. Census. And these 20 million illegals that have been flooded into sanctuary cities at your expense, by the way, and flown in here by the Biden administration from sub-Saharan Africa in exchange for free welfare money and free everything for life, as long as once they get citizenship, vote Democrat, or they get safety from being deported in a sanctuary city. That's the whole point. You create a sanctuary city, and there's no way they can be deported because Gavin Newsom and all of his left-wing buddies are going to prevent ICE from getting you deported, right? They're going to protect you. So of course you're going to go to a Democrat sanctuary city. What does that do? Just what it did in California. California picked up an additional 5 congressional seats by becoming a sanctuary city, and that's how it's been able to stay dark blue. Because again, nobody supports men and women's sports. At least the majority of Americans don't support men and women's sports. They don't support tampon machines in the boys' restroom. So the only way that the Democrats can maintain political power is to use illegal aliens and sanctuary cities and motor voter laws to make sure that they can stay in power. So it never had anything to do with anything other than that. And so the United States Census is the reason why the Democrats flooded this country with 20 million illegals. It has nothing to do with wanting people to pick strawberries. The people who were picking strawberries are still picking strawberries. No new people have been brought in to do that. And that's the issue. The people that have been brought up here are being given free welfare, free everything, and they're being protected under this law that allows them to stay here pending a hearing. It's like a protection order that was intended for people that came from El Salvador, for example, after the volcanic eruptions and earthquakes back in the 80s and the Contra wars and all that stuff that was going on. It was never intended to just allow people to flood across the border for free stuff. And that's basically what happened. One of the very first acts of Joe Biden as president was to reverse Donald Trump's executive order that mandated that illegal aliens shelter in place and enter the country at the port of entry through an embassy or through a consulate and seek permission to become protected under U.S. law, not just sneak across illegally and seek protection afterwards. And as a result, we had hundreds of thousands of criminals that were released from prisons like in Venezuela coming up to the United States, engaged in human trafficking. The drug cartels made billions of dollars flooding illegals across the border. And many people say that is how Arizona turned blue, that the cartels basically paid off the judiciary and the local officials in Arizona to make sure they could continue their human trafficking operations. And so there's a lot of stuff going on. But it's really cool to see all you guys who are not able to produce any evidence, just say lies, 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 but none of you can produce evidence. So it's really cool to see that. And of course, we always know the left, since they can't come up with evidence, always engage in ad hominem attacks. So I've just provided you proof that, in fact, the way that the Democrat Party was able to wrestle control of California was by using the U.S. Census. And the way they do it is by creating a sanctuary city. And what that does is it creates a funnel for illegal aliens to come in, guaranteed that they won't be deported and that the government won't assist ICE in deporting them. So where are they going to go? Well, they're not going to go to a red state that supports rule of law. They're going to go to a blue state. And that blue state, upon the next census, counts those illegals. And for purposes of apportionment and redistricting, each one of those states and cities picks up new Democrat congressional seats. And that is the end game. And so if Trump is not able to get these illegal aliens out of the country by the time he leaves office, there is a high statistical probability that the entire country will turn deep blue using illegal aliens to pick up congressional seats. And none of them even have to vote. That's the beauty of what the Democrats did here. None of these illegals even have to cast a single vote, guys. That is just amazing. And again, they would have to do that, right? Because how else could they maintain power? When they push minor attracted persons laws, when they push boys playing in women's sports, when they think the tampon machine should be in the boys' restroom. I mean, if you guys noticed, over 250,000 families are fleeing California every year, including myself, who have children, because they don't want their boys and girls being taught by these far-left Marxist public school teachers that their sons are really daughters and that their daughters are really boys, right? They don't want to help the Democrat Party's friends in the medical industry, the medical industrial complex, inject their children with steroids and hormones and cut off their body parts and try to make them into something that they biologically can never be, which basically will make them be consistently and continuously having to seek psychological counseling all their lives and have to be on pharmaceutical medications because of what they've done to their bodies with hormones. So that is the real problem. And I don't know about all this black. You guys always talk about black people and all this stuff. I don't get it. Most of the people that I serve with in the Marine Corps who are black would never vote Democrat because they believe in a merit-based society. And the Democrats don't believe in a merit-based society like they did when I was a Democrat. They believe that everything should be decided based upon race, or if you're a dude and you like balling another dude, that somehow that's called DEI, and that's how we should look at people based upon not the content of their character, but the color of their skin or their sexual preferences. And so I think most people who are critical thinkers realize that that is not a good way to put people into power, that people should be put into power based upon their qualifications and their merit and their skills. And I think, give me a bunch of ones if most of you agree with that. And give me a bunch of twos if you think that I'm a racist, bigot, and a homophobe. Because I'm okay with you saying that if you want to, because I'm not. I mean, I have an interracial marriage, I have mixed kids, and I just don't want my kids growing up being told by a leftist, communist public school teacher that white men are, what do they call us? They have all these names for us, but that we're evil, we're this, we're that. Hey, look, man, I'm just a free man upon the land who doesn't want to be judged based on the color of my skin, and I'm not going to judge you based on the color of your skin or who you sleep with either. I'm going to look at, are you qualified? Are you somebody that I would follow into combat if I was attacked? Are you somebody I could count on in my hour of need to defend me and my family? And if you are, then you are part of Team MPE. And give me a bunch of ones if you agree. So with that being said, guys, yeah, thanks, No Name. Yeah, I agree with you, Jet, but the problem is it doesn't matter if the Democrats keep supporting, adults sleeping with kids and all this stuff, because if those 20 million illegals aren't deported and kicked out of this country, the Democrats stand to pick up about 10 or 11 new House seats, because the U.S. Census is how they'll do it. They'll split districts based upon this new illegal alien population that has been flooded into sanctuary cities. Again, California, at least 5 of their House seats are because of illegal aliens. If those illegal aliens were kicked out of the country, California would be a red state again. And so we know that that is the real reason why Sleepy Joe Mr. Autopen, flooded the country with illegals and didn't want to build a border wall. It has nothing to do with wanting to help these poor people. It has to do with the Democrats wanting to maintain power, because they knew that there's no way they could convince regular Americans who are capable of critical thinking to vote for men and women's sports, to vote for we're here, we're queer, we're coming for your children, public school teachers. It's no way. Parents don't support that crap, and that's why they're fleeing California. That's why the middle class and people who pay for all the taxes are leaving the state of California. The only people left are the Hollywood leftist commies and the illegal aliens. That's pretty much how it's going to be, and the people who can't afford to move. And we see that happening all over, but it won't matter, because after those 20 million illegal aliens are able to redistrict using the U.S. Census, this entire country will be blue forever. So what do you guys think? Do you guys think that the Trump case is going to be reversed on appeal? I do. And I think that that Alvin Bragg knew that he should have never brought the charges, but I think that the activist Democrat Judge Merchant, who had a daughter who raised funds for the Democrat Party based upon the fact that her father was the Democrat activist judge in charge of the Trump case, was going to make sure that Trump was convicted. So I think that we've got a lot of problems with that case, as well as all the other cases. I mean, look at Letitia James. I mean, come on. She put on mortgage applications that her dad was her husband and then tries to bring charges, civil cases against Trump based upon less evidence and using an all-Democrat jury. I mean, come on, guys. Do you really think that in a Republican state, these charges would have ever been brought against Trump? Of course not, because a Republican jury would have never convicted him or found civil liability against him. And so I think that the U.S. Supreme Court is going to have no option but to reverse these cases because, again, if they don't, it's going to be used against him in the future. Hey, Chevy, good seeing you, brother. I appreciate that. Again, guys, I love all the super chats and the memberships, but that doesn't mean that I'm not going to continue volunteering my time to stand up for the United States of America and we the people. It just helps me fund my channel and helps me be able to get these shows out to you. So I came to you early today because I want to get a workout in, and then I'm taking my son to judo. So I really appreciate all the support, guys. And I'm just going to look really quick to see if there's any questions that I can answer that might be helpful. Let's see here. So Stephanie says he didn't commit any crimes. Oh yeah, that was a total bogus case. And let me see here. Salt Shaker, good seeing you, ma'am. Okay, then Lynn Daly says the guy voted for a felon. He has brains of a crayon. Well, I do eat crayons because I'm a Marine, but no, come on. Does anybody really believe that any of those so-called felony convictions are valid? Give me a break. I mean, look at the witness. Their star witness was a scumbag attorney who violated his oath, who tried to use extortion and illegally recorded phone calls of his client, Donald Trump. And these dumbasses, this stupid ass prosecutor, Bragg, literally was able to use that as evidence. The judge allowed that evidence in. Are you kidding me? Insane. And then, of course, Angel from Cotton said, oh, a jury convicted him. Well, Angel, guess what? Since you're obviously a BLM supporter, how many black people were convicted of crimes they didn't commit? Now, do you guys know, back in the 18 and 1700s, do you guys know that in the United Kingdom, after families had family members hung, hundreds of years later in some cases, were able to get those cases reversed on appeal? Do you guys know that? So it just makes me laugh that you left-wing communist Democrats are totally okay with somebody you don't like getting convicted based on political reasons. But if it's somebody that you do like Hillary Clinton, who violated her oath of office, who illegally used a private server, right? Or Joe Biden, who stole top secret and confidential documents and kept them in his garage in boxes next to his Corvette that his drug addict scumbag loser son used to drive. They're all innocent, right? Because they support your political beliefs. And that's why I'm so grateful to God that I don't support either political party, because I'm able as a libertarian to look at both of you guys and laugh. You guys think that lawfare is okay. You think it's okay to use the court system against your political enemies the same way it's being used against Lane Myers, the same way it was used against Chili DeCastro of Delete Laws. And that just makes me sick. You guys are all about free Barabbas, free Barabbas. Let's get Jesus. Let's get the Messiah. Let's go after the guy we don't like and free the guy who's really the killer, because ideologically we're opposed to their belief systems. That is really sad to me. That makes me really sad that you guys believe that way. Now, let's see here. Well, yeah, Trump did unclassify his documents, but Joe Biden didn't have the legal authority to unclassify his documents because he stole them when he was a senator. And so the only way that you're able to do it is if you're the president. And Trump was the president, and he did declassify his documents. And in fact, that's what the Florida federal justice found. And the Supreme Court also ruled that he couldn't be charged. That Smith guy, he lost that case and he was never even lawfully appointed a special prosecutor. And he probably is guilty of high treason. And his days are probably numbered, at least politically, and he might do jail time for what he tried to do. So that's a big difference. Trump had the ability to declassify his documents, and it was so sad that the Democrats had to use this FBI agent to basically say, well, the reason we can't, even though we find that Joe Biden illegally stole those classified and confidential and secret documents that he kept in his garage next to his Corvette, we can't prosecute him because basically he's suffering from dementia and he's incapable of perceiving what the charges against him would be. But yet, Biden was allowed to stay in office, and all your buddies at CNN and all your Democrat friends said, oh no, Biden's the best. He's not suffering from... Look, I knew the guy had dementia from the very first presidential debates. I do elder abuse law. I can tell when someone's got dementia, man. It's obvious that the dude didn't know what the hell he was doing. And now we're finding out that Elizabeth Warren is the one who had the auto pen. So she's signing off on all these executive orders and all these laws, probably even pardoning people. And it just blows me away that you guys support something like that. Step outside your partisan political beliefs and look at what happened in this last joke of a president. And Joe, you know what, Joe? You don't have to be a doctor to know when someone's a retard. You don't have to be a doctor to know when someone's suffering from dementia, especially when you practice law for over 20 years and done hundreds of elder abuse cases. You can tell when someone has the symptoms of dementia. It's obvious. So that's another problem with most Democrats, is they believe that unless you went to a far left communist run school and get some worthless piece of paper, that you don't have the authority to discuss things that are open and obvious as a matter of common sense. And so give me a bunch of ones if you believe that you don't need to go to some far left commie run school in order to speak out on what's an obvious and open fact. It's obvious for the whole world to see. Give me a bunch of ones if you agree with that. And let's see here. And so somebody says Trump refused to give them back, even though he was Trump declassified the documents. He was allowed to keep them. He had no duty to give them back. They were declassified by him when he left office. And by the way, guys, those cases were dismissed. So Trump won. I don't know why you guys keep on parroting stuff you heard on communist-run, Democrat-controlled news media, because those cases are over. And the Trump 34 or 35 felony charge case is also going to be vacated on appeal, as is the civil case against Trump, where Letitia James will probably be jailed for the rest of her life for engaging in mortgage fraud. Remember, this Democrat activist, Letitia James, put on mortgage applications that are public record that her dad is her husband. But yet you guys still support her. And that's the whole point I'm trying to make, is you could be presented with open and obvious evidence that these Democrats are political operatives using lawfare and the court system to destroy their political opponents, but you'll keep supporting them. But when there's absolute historical and common law evidence that Trump should have never been charged or gone after using lawfare, you'll say, well, since he's Trump and he's Orange Man, he's bad, so he's guilty. So you can't have it both ways, guys, and that's a problem that I have with you. So, and that's not true, Crystal M. The president can declassify any document that he wants, and that was already determined, and everything you're talking about is not true. And again, if it was, Trump would have been convicted, he would have been found liable, and those cases would have gone forward. Instead, those cases were thrown out. Remember that, they were thrown out. So I don't know what you're talking about, lady. So anyways, let's see here. Now, Benjai, I'm with you on a lot of the stuff you're saying. And let me see here. Well, there's a lot of people in here today. My goodness. So I'm trying to read. You support a guy who would do something with his own. Look, I'm not a Trump supporter. I'm a libertarian. And so it just makes me laugh. And then Mary Lawson, you're disregarding that the Democrat judge and the Democrat prosecutor and the 1,000,000% hardcore left-wing Democrat jury should have never heard any of this information. It all was supposed to be thrown out. The case should have never been brought. And when you have a judge who's pushing the jury to get a conviction, they're going to get a conviction. And so I could say the same to you. Well, you're disregarding the fact that all those black people who were lynched, they were convicted back in the 17 and 1800s. What's the difference? Tell me, Mary, what's the difference? Exactly. You can't. You can't. When a judge and a biased jury goes against someone they don't like, typically for political reasons, you're going to lose. And if the Supreme Court doesn't reverse the case on appeal, every single Democrat who, once they leave office, is going to be criminally prosecuted by the next Republican, and every single Republican is going to be criminally prosecuted and convicted by Democrats. And prior to Obama, there was an unspoken agreement between both political parties that this simply would not happen, because they knew that that after what Obama did, using all of his far left communist political operatives, that this would happen and continue to go on in perpetuity. So, and that's exactly what's happening, guys. I mean, watch what's going to happen. Letitia James is going to end up doing life in prison for what she did, and it's just going to keep happening, guys. So, you better be careful for what you wish for, because it could happen to you too. And so, as a libertarian, I'm telling you guys, I'm hoping that cooler heads will prevail, and that somehow or another we'll start judging people based upon their character rather than what the leftist news media says, rather than what some Marxist public school teacher says, or some scumbag university professor who's never had a job in their life says. And I'm hoping that you guys will agree with me. And let me see here. Yeah, and Crystal says Obama was investigated for 8 years without a single... Well, why do you think that is? Have you ever thought for a second that it's because the globalists have control over all of our agencies like the CIA and the FBI, and that they have dossiers on everyone? I mean, look at the Epstein Island case. I would say probably half of his guests were politicians, Republicans and Democrats, and that they have dossiers. The Mossad, many people now realize that Epstein was a Mossad agent, has all this information. They have all this truth. So that's the reality of it, guys. So, of course, exactly, Conrad, I'm very concerned about Trump not releasing the Epstein files. And then for someone like Don Jackson to say Obama is clean, that's a laugh. You got to be kidding me. Oh, my God. So let's see here. Yeah, I think you're right, What's the Matter You. I think there's some problems. What's the Matter You makes a valid point that Trump was a friend of Epstein. There could be some serious issues here, and it definitely is concerning to me. But right now, this particular show is about whether or not lawfare was used to get wrongful convictions against Donald Trump. And I think everybody knows that the Democrats used lawfare to try to prevent him from running for president. And that's what ultimately blew up in their face. So those cases will be reversed on appeal, as will the civil conviction, the civil finding of liability. The classified documents case was thrown out because there was no valid basis to bring it to begin with. The Supreme Court already found that to be the case. And Keith Bender is right. There are plenty of FBI agents being investigated for child trafficking. Epstein, Diddy. I think it's more like Epstein, Diddy, and Obama. Remember, Trump didn't go to Diddy parties. Obama did, him and Big Mike. And anybody who doesn't think that Obama is part of this, it's because you've been brainwashed to think that his skin color somehow absolves him. But remember, Obama is a CIA operative. Obama is a buddy of the Bushes. And that you're totally caught up in this political party thing. This has nothing to do with political parties, guys. This is a battle of principalities of power. These both parties, in many ways, are connected, and that's why they don't let a third party in. And Trump represents that third party. So that's the problem. So, hey, Michael Wilbur, good seeing you. It looks like my moderators are at work, man. Gosh. And then Dwayne Miller says, you definitely don't know what you're talking about. Well, that makes sense that you would say that, Dwayne, because it sounds like you spend your time watching CNN, which soon will be bankrupt, just like your political philosophy is also bankrupt. Hey, the Bull Moose Party, a prime example, Michael Wilbur. And, yeah, the way you know that the left is losing is they can only engage in ad hominem attacks. They never have any factual evidence or legally supportable evidence. It's just personal attacks. And it's really, really sad. It reminds me of a high school with peer pressure winning the day. And Matrix says, Trump is a dictator, nothing else matters, blah, blah, blah. Oh my God, you guys are unbelievable. Hey, let's OTVO, no liberty, no justice for all who disagree. That's right. So, let's see here. And then Angel says, you're the one doing personal attacks. My goodness. Okay. So in any event, all you guys, you're right. What's the matter? You, the Republicans are not conservatives. Yeah, I agree with you on that. And you're right, Chris. The felonies were elevated from misdemeanors because they were past the statute of limitations. Yeah, that case is going to get thrown out. It was obvious a Democrat scheme to try and make Trump look bad. And it was based upon things that he did as under his official acts as president. And the evidence was based upon a convicted criminal lawyer who illegally used extortion and recorded private, confidential, and privileged communications between him and his client, President Trump. And so me as a lawyer, if I had done that, I would be in prison too. But the difference is no judge in their right mind would have ever allowed his testimony to have any weight in front of a jury. So that's another problem that we have. So yeah, Trump got convicted based upon the judge allowing evidence of a criminal attorney and a porn star alleged prostitute to be used as evidence, and for the jury not to be able to use that to weigh that evidence against Trump. So anyways, guys, I'm going to go hit the gym. It was an amazing time today that I had with you. God bless all you guys. Semper Fidelis. With that being said, make sure to like and subscribe. Make sure to save, because we never know when the thought police are going to take down this channel. Semper Fi, do or die. Era.